Daniel Crow had never claimed to be a hero. Most days, he considered himself lucky if he could pilot a shuttle without spilling synthetic coffee on his uniform or accidentally ejecting the wrong storage pods into the void. Yet here he was, orbiting a neutral space station on the fringes of the war-torn Elythrian sector, assigned to a routine observation mission that felt anything but routine. The station, a clumsy sprawl of metallic arms and blinking lights, hummed with a faint rhythm like a mechanical heartbeat. Daniel muttered to himself, "I swear, one more day in this floating tin can and I'm requesting transfer to desk duty on Earth, or a nice desk on Mars, whichever is closer." Routine, as it turned out, had a perverse sense of humor. He had barely finished his third cup of coffee when the security alert blared, signaling a high-priority diplomatic arrival. Daniel shuffled toward the docking bay, expecting a dignitary or a minor official, but instead found a small shuttle gliding in with the elegance of a falling leaf. Its passenger, the Elythrian girl, had already drawn a crowd without even trying. Lyra stepped out with careful grace, her pale skin shimmering under the station's lights, her long ears twitching slightly as if catching some secret melody in the air. Daniel blinked, noticing first her delicate features, then realizing her fragility. She moved as if gravity itself were a polite suggestion rather than a rule. He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Oh, welcome to the station. I'm Lieutenant Crow, your reception committee," his voice cracked. Lyra tilted her head, those long ears twitching like twin antennas. She said nothing, but a faint telepathic impression nudged his mind, a polite, almost shy greeting that left him mumbling, "Right, telepathy, of course, totally normal. I definitely signed up for this." As if to confirm that his life had officially gone off the rails, alarms screamed seconds later. A faction of rogue Elythrians, convinced that the girl's arrival threatened their schemes, launched a sudden assault. Daniel, trained for combat but notoriously clumsy under pressure, ducked instinctively and knocked over a stack of maintenance crates. "Great start," he muttered as sparks flew and a hovering security droid skidded into his leg. Lyra, meanwhile, seemed to faint in a way that made him panic more than the attackers did. He caught her before she hit the floor, nearly toppling over himself, and thought, "I'm a terrible bodyguard. Seriously, the worst. Maybe I can just hide and hope they mistake me for a crate." The Elythrian king's voice boomed across the comms, calm but firm. "Lieutenant Crow, you will protect her. No excuses. Failure is undesirable." Daniel blinked. "Failure is undesirable, got it. Crystal clear, sir, totally clear." He glanced at Lyra, whose faint telepathic chuckle suggested she found his panicked scrambling oddly amusing. "Oh great," he whispered. "Even the fragile ones have a sense of humor. Fantastic." The escape from the station was a comedy of errors. Daniel accidentally activated the shuttle's emergency thrusters while trying to release the docking clamps, sending them spinning like a pair of confused comets. Lyra, sensing the turbulence, extended a faint energy field that kept them from smashing into the station walls. He stared at her, jaw slack, and said, I just thought you were fragile." Apparently, fragile has a very broad definition. She tilted her head and emitted a small telepathic chuckle, which he interpreted as, "You have no idea." Through the chaos, Daniel began noticing small hints of her hidden strength. When a loose cargo container threatened to crush them, her hand brushed it and it hovered in the air like a leaf caught in a breeze. When the shuttle's gravity stabilized suddenly, Lyra laughed softly, a sound like wind chimes in zero gravity, and said something telepathically that made Daniel blink and reply aloud, Yes, I will try not to hit the floor again. I swear." By the time they reached the edge of Elythrian space, Daniel was exhausted, his uniform scorched in places and his nerves frayed. Lyra, on the other hand, sat serenely, her long ears twitching as if they were absorbing cosmic secrets. Daniel shook his head. "I have no idea what I'm doing and neither do you, but somehow we're alive. That counts for something, right?" Lyra's telepathic reply was almost mischievous. "You may live for now." They drifted through nebulae that shimmered like liquid jewels, Daniel struggling to keep the shuttle's systems online, and Lyra occasionally adjusting a control with a mere thought, causing subtle but impressive shifts in trajectory. He muttered sarcastically, "So apparently babysitting a future galactic savior is part of my job description. Great. Fantastic. This will look good on my resume." In quieter moments, Daniel found himself talking to her about trivial human things: the taste of coffee, the absurdity of zero-gravity showers, the way Earthlings argued over things that didn't matter in the vastness of space. Lyra listened patiently, occasionally sending mental images that made him laugh despite himself. A tiny holographic Earth dancing in a swirl of cosmic dust, a cat with impossibly long ears chasing asteroids. He realized then that caring for her wasn't just about survival, it was about connection. And connection, he discovered, had a curious way of igniting hidden sparks. By the end of the first week, Daniel's routine had changed. He no longer thought of Lyra as fragile. He thought of her as unpredictable, clever, and startlingly capable of a quiet strength that hinted at unimaginable power. Yet for all her emerging potential, she retained an innocent humor, a playful glimmer that reminded him they were still just two beings thrown together in a galaxy that didn't care whether they lived or died. As they approached the Elythrian border, Daniel whispered, "Next time, maybe I'll bring a warning sign. Caution, alien girl may be stronger than she looks. Human may panic." Lyra's telepathic laughter echoed softly in his mind as the stars stretched endlessly ahead. And Daniel, exhausted, terrified, and oddly exhilarated, realized that this journey was going to change everything both for her and for him. The shuttle hummed with an uneasy calm as Daniel Crowe struggled to keep his eyes open. He had spent most of the previous cycle juggling navigation, repair logs, and the occasional existential panic, all while keeping Lyra from floating into the walls or accidentally telekinetically rearranging the controls. She sat opposite him, legs crossed in a way that suggested grace, poise, and total disregard for the chaos surrounding her, her long ears twitching slightly as if listening to a symphony only she could hear. Daniel, for his part, had discovered that the average human body was far less suited to interstellar babysitting than he had ever imagined. He had stubbed his toe on a storage bin, spilled synthetic coffee again, and nearly set off the emergency eject sequence while trying to fetch a towel. He muttered, "I swear, if gravity had a manual, it would have my name on it as problematic." Lyra, for her part, was utterly amused. She flicked her fingers toward a small stack of floating tools, and without moving a muscle otherwise, they aligned neatly on the control panel. Daniel blinked. "Okay, I see it now. Fragile is apparently code for galactic ninja in training. Noted." She telepathically transmitted a small giggle into his mind, and he recoiled as though someone had tickled his brain. "Right, noted," he said aloud. "Next time I insult your frailty, I will also check for psychic retaliation." Lesson learned. Their route to the Elythrian capital involved threading through the Veil Nebula, a region of gas clouds that shimmered with colors that made Daniel's vision ache and his stomach lurch. He kept the shuttle steady, muttering to himself about how the space maps clearly underestimated the artistic temperament of interstellar gas formations. Lyra occasionally reached over to touch the navigation interface, and the ship responded in ways Daniel could not explain. It swerved around floating debris with a fluidity that made him dizzy, as though the shuttle were dancing to a rhythm only she could hear. "I don't even want to know how you're doing that," he said, gripping the console. "Seriously, don't tell me it's telepathy plus gravity bending plus whatever that thing was. I like to pretend I understand half the things I see." For all the humor that punctuated their journey, danger was never far behind. Small pirate scouts trailed them like persistent mosquitoes, curious and possibly hungry for plunder. Daniel, trained for combat but notoriously overcautious, activated the shuttle's defensive systems with an awkward flourish. Alarms rang, lights flashed, and a minor misfire caused one of the pirates' drones to spin uncontrollably into its own hull. Lyra snorted, a sound like delicate chimes, and telepathically nudged him. "See. Your clumsiness has strategic value," Daniel groaned. "Of course, my entire life has been a series of unintentional victories. Thanks for the pep talk, fragile one." They encountered an asteroid field next, dense with jagged rock and magnetic anomalies. Daniel tried to pilot carefully, but every minor adjustment seemed to trigger an unexpected drift, sending him into a low-level panic. Lyra extended her hands, and a soft, glowing barrier shimmered around the shuttle, nudging it through narrow passes with gentle precision. He watched slack-jawed as a rogue asteroid skidded past, missing the hull by centimeters. Right, okay, I get it, he said. Fragile, check, deadly, apparently check, and I'm supposed to keep up. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. She let out a small laugh, the kind that made him feel simultaneously exasperated and oddly proud. During the quieter hours, they talked. Daniel shared the absurdities of human life, how Earthlings argued over who got the last slice of synthetic pizza, the chaotic beauty of zero-gravity sports, and the habit of naming objects that didn't need names. Lyra listened, occasionally projecting shimmering images that made him blink and grin. A holographic cat with impossibly long ears bouncing along asteroids, a tiny Earth spinning atop a translucent teacup, and a miniature spaceship attempting a landing on his forehead. Daniel laughed despite himself. Okay, I admit this is slightly less stressful than being blown to cosmic dust. Slightly. One evening, while Daniel dozed against a bulkhead, Lyra's attention shifted. She stood quietly, almost reverently, extending her hands toward the shuttle's systems. Tiny arcs of energy traced across her fingertips, dancing like fireflies. The shuttle responded, systems optimizing themselves with an eerie, fluid precision. Daniel woke to see her surrounded by a soft glow, the quiet hum of the ship harmonizing with her energy. Okay, he whispered, voice trembling between awe and panic. Definitely fragile, right? Definitely not casually moving a shuttle like it's a toy. Lyra's ears twitched and she sent a small mental message. I am learning. You are amusing. Daniel muttered, amusing? Great. Just what I want to be called while possibly dying in space. Thanks, Fragile One. A particularly dangerous moment arrived when a rogue patrol of Elythrian war drones intercepted them. Daniel panicked, hitting the wrong sequence and nearly opening the cargo bay to vacuum. Lyra, entirely unbothered, extended a pulse of energy that caused the drones to glitch and spin, each strike precise and controlled, neutralizing them without collateral damage. Daniel, gripping the console, muttered, right. So apparently the babysitter has to be babysat by the baby. Excellent. Fantastic. I will update my personal log, heroic incompetence mandatory, watch for superpowered alien. By the time they cleared the patrol, Daniel realized something strange. Despite the constant danger and his own constant clumsiness, he had begun to trust Lyra not just to keep them alive but to keep him sane in the absurd theater of space. He watched her study a navigation hologram, her long ears flicking with subtle concentration, and felt a strange, warming reassurance. You're still fragile, right? He asked, voice almost hopeful. She tilted her head, ears twitching, and transmitted a small, teasing thought. For you, perhaps, but only slightly. As they approached the edge of Elythrian territory, the colors of the nebula giving way to the deep black of unclaimed space, Daniel's mind wandered to what lay ahead. The Elythrian capital was no small city. It was a living organism of technology, power, and tradition. They would face scrutiny, possible hostility, and, judging by previous experience, every conceivable complication that the universe could muster. Yet, for the first time in his career, Daniel felt a sense of anticipation mixed with absurd amusement. Well, he muttered, if I survive, I'll get medals, or at least a nice story for the recruitment office. Probably mostly about how my fragile little charge almost killed me 5 times and still made me laugh. Lyra's telepathic giggle floated gently in his mind as the shuttle adjusted course. Perhaps, Lieutenant Crow, she sent, your laughter is as essential as your caution. Do not underestimate it. Daniel grinned, rubbing his temples. Right, caution, laughter, and apparently babysitting a potentially galactic-level powerhouse. Got it. Totally manageable. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, twinkling with promises, perils, and more than a few cosmic jokes. Daniel, exhausted and exhilarated, realized that the journey with Lyra was only just beginning, and if the universe was patient enough, perhaps they would survive it together, one clumsy, chaotic, hilarious step at a time. The Elythrian capital rose before them like a living constellation, a lattice of crystalline spires and floating bridges shimmering with energy that seemed to pulse in time with some unseen heartbeat. Daniel Crow squinted at the vista from the shuttle's cockpit, muttering, I swear, this place looks like it was built by someone with too much time, zero sense of modesty, and probably a fondness for dramatic lighting. Lyra, seated beside him with her long ears gently twitching, tilted her head at his comment and sent a faint telepathic giggle into his mind. Your sense of humor is oddly resilient. They landed amidst the orderly chaos of the capital, civilians and security droids weaving around each other with practiced ease. Daniel struggled to keep up, tripping over his own boots and nearly bumping into a floating transport pod. Lyra extended a hand subtly, and a minor gravitational adjustment righted him before he hit the floor. "Thanks," he muttered, face red. "I swear my reputation as a competent soldier is hanging by a thread here." She only smiled faintly, long ears twitching as if amused by his human awkwardness. The reception, however, was not what Daniel had imagined. A sudden alarm echoed through the city as sensors detected an incursion. An interstellar army had taken advantage of their transit to invade, seeking to seize the Elithrians' unique energy reserves. Daniel's heart sank. Great, so apparently my fragile passenger is also an unintentional harbinger of war. Fantastic. Lyra, for her part, simply rose to her feet, calm and composed. "I will handle this," she transmitted, her thoughts precise and unshakable. Daniel stared at her wide-eyed. "You just said that like it's a casual grocery run, and I'm supposed to wait. What do I do? Sit here and look heroic?" They moved toward the center of the capital, weaving through streets of floating vehicles and energy bridges. The invaders descended in formation, massive mechs glinting with alien weaponry. Daniel fumbled with his own weapon, a plasma rifle that felt cumbersome in his hands compared to Lyra's effortless manipulation of energy around her. "Okay," he whispered to himself, "maybe just stay out of the way and hope the fragile one does all the heavy lifting." Lyra's ears twitched at his comment and she sent a faint, teasing thought, "Fragile, yes, but only if you keep underestimating me." The battle erupted in waves of dazzling energy. Lyra moved with an effortless grace, her long ears swaying as she directed blasts that disabled the enemy mechs one by one. Daniel, dodging erratically, shouted sarcastic commentary, "Watch out, incoming doom." "Oh, never mind, it just evaporated. Cool. Good job, fragile one." Civilians watched in awe as the girl who had seemed so delicate days ago commanded gravity and energy with precision, bending the invaders' technology against them. At one point, Daniel attempted a daring but clumsy flank maneuver, only to stumble into a pile of debris. Lyra extended a protective field with a flick of her hand, nudging him upright without interrupting her battle. He grinned sheepishly, muttering, "See, teamwork. I trip, you save the universe." Classic hero routine. She telepathically transmitted a small laugh, classic human. As the fight intensified, Daniel realized he was no longer the same soldier who had nervously escorted Lyra through the Veil Nebula. He had learned to read her subtle cues, to anticipate her movements, and even to contribute in small but meaningful ways, like improvising diversions, activating environmental defenses, and occasionally yelling at the enemy with the sort of human bravado only half-crazed desperation could fuel. He realized that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the willingness to act in spite of it, especially when the person beside you wielded powers that defied comprehension. Lyra reached the central plaza, a place of raw energy conduits and floating walkways. The leader of the invading force, a towering mech pilot with an aura of menace, confronted her. Daniel, crouched behind a floating barricade, whispered, "Okay, this is it. Fragile versus Doom incarnate. Don't explode, fragile one, please." Lyra's energy flared, bathing the plaza in a radiant glow. With a series of precise gestures, she redirected the mech's own weapons, neutralizing it without destruction, forcing the enemy to retreat in confused awe. Daniel, hands still shaking, called out sarcastically, "And that's how you do it, folks. Please remain seated during the galactic miracle demonstration." In the aftermath, the capital buzzed with relief and astonishment. Lyra, still glowing faintly with residual energy, turned to Daniel with a small smile. "We did it, together." Daniel blinked, realizing that despite her overwhelming power, it had been their bond, the trust, the humor, the shared chaos that had made victory possible. "Yeah," he said, exhaling together. "And next time, maybe we aim for fewer near-death experiences, just a suggestion." She sent a faint telepathic laugh. "We will see." The Elithrian king arrived, his expression a mixture of pride and disbelief. He bowed slightly to Daniel. "You have cared for her well," he said, voice resonant. "Because of your guidance, she has awakened. You have changed her path and perhaps the fate of both our peoples." Daniel swallowed, shrugging sheepishly. "I mostly tripped a lot and made bad jokes. But glad it helped. That counts as hero work, right? Lyra's ears twitched almost theatrically as if to reinforce his modesty. Hero work, she agreed. In the quiet that followed, Daniel and Lyra walked through the central plaza. Debris floated gently around them, and the city began to hum its restored rhythm. Daniel found himself laughing more freely, his shoulders lighter despite the exhaustion. He realized that he had changed. From a soldier who only followed orders to a man who had learned patience, trust, and the unpredictable value of humor in the face of cosmic chaos. Lyra, for her part, had transformed from a fragile girl into a confident warrior, yet retained her playfulness and curiosity, her long ears flicking at the faintest sounds as if still teasing the universe itself. As the sun, or what passed for a sun in this sector, glinted off the crystalline spires, Daniel muttered, "Well, fragile one, I guess we've survived. Not exactly sure how, but we did." Lyra sent a gentle telepathic smile into his mind. "Yes, and the universe seems slightly more interesting now." Daniel grinned, realizing that the galaxy was indeed full of danger, laughter, and the occasional miraculous ally. He would not have wanted it any other way. They stood together, two figures framed against the glowing Elythrian skyline, a human and a long-eared alien warrior, bound by trust, laughter, and the improbable series of events that had brought them here.